Hey guys, so what's been happening in the hobby this week? Well, I thought we'd get into some old world. So, it's been a little bit of time now since my last video on this and a few painting tutorials as well. And so I thought we'd get into some more discussion on the old world and, just having fun with it and all of that sort of thing and the experience that I've had so far and all those sorts of like early experiences and sort of positive and maybe some negative too thoughts on the game and how it is currently, because it's been a bit of time. It's almost been out for what is it, almost a year now, and something like that anyway. And I've been just very diligently going along and converting up models and getting everything ready. And what we have in front here is some knights plus an aspiring champion here on his steed. And I've been doing a little bit of conversion, just some head swaps and small adjustments here and there. These are actually Age of Sigmar models that have been converted, so the Chaos Knights from Age of Sigmar. And with a little tiny rejigging and moving around, you can get them to fit on these square bases, and it comes up quite well. So you do have to sort of number them, so I've put the numbers on the bottom so that they fit together properly when they're all ranked up, but it does work, so you can do it if anyone's curious. So we're going to get into that. We're going to be doing it in my custom scheme like I normally do. If you haven't seen on the channel, check those out. If I'm really good, I'll put one in the top right hand corner here, and we're going to be going through doing all the metals, the color glazing, that blue and purple blend that I've got on the capes, etc., and getting these done. I think that'll be really, really cool. I can't wait. And I've been playing a few games already, so we'll be talking about that. And just having a bit of fun with Old World and enjoying a bit of a discussion. So I'll stop waffling on now and we'll get on to that main topic, eh? All right, so I've had some games, and that's really cool. And I've talked a little bit about this, like getting into Old World and so on before. So I can't remember whether I talked so much about my experience with the games, but we're going to talk about it now. So sorry if I've already talked about this before. I can't really remember. It's been a while since I did those videos, but I'm pretty sure I haven't talked about this yet. So we're going to go over it anyway and move on to aspects of it and topics around it. So I've had my first games and enjoyed that immensely. It's been a really, really awesome experience getting back into fantasy or Old World, I should say, and enjoying that. The rank and flank game is definitely something that's it scratches an itch that the sort of more sort of loose skirmish squad style based gaming doesn't really give you. It's all about positioning and movement and all of those really sort of very specific aspects of that movement phase and how everything works out, which I really enjoy. I love all that stuff. The arcs, the front arcs of the units, etc., and the misplays and taking advantage of situations and all of that stuff that comes with that type of rank and flank game. It's really, really cool, and I'm so happy that it's back. I think I've mentioned this before. When I first started getting back into this, I was looking for fantasy and it wasn't there. I'd step back in literally just after they'd killed fantasy, and so I was like, where's the game, And it was gone, and Age of Sigmar was here, and so I was like, oh, okay. So I was a bit disappointed because I did want to play a rank and flank game. So then I got into 40k and then into Age of Sigmar and so on, and the rest is history, and now I've got a channel. But I am very happy it's back, and those early games that I've played now is it's a really, really cool experience, and an interesting one too. And I'm not sure why this is interesting so much, or not interesting, but why I'm surprised at this. It could be just because of my previous experience with fantasy, but one of the biggest sort of takeaways after my first initial game and subsequent ones was just the level of mental load that you experience over the game is way less, and that's surprising to me. Not just the length of game, which is also actually surprisingly less. It's actually faster, but the mental load and the sort of the headaches that you can get from the high tense situations. I wouldn't call myself a sweaty gamer or like a very competitive gamer timer necessarily, but I do like to play a competitive game when I'm playing, even if it's casually with a mate. I do like to put my best foot forward and try to play tactically and give my opponent a good game. With Age of Sigmar, it can be quite taxing because you have to keep so much in your head. There's so many keywords and so many sort of overlapping buffs and various types of interactions, which you've got to be constantly thinking about in order to play your turns. Whereas with Old World, as with Fantasy back in the day, it's you do all your things, and then your opponent does theirs, and you've got all that time in their turn to think about your turn. And so the mental load is kind of distributed differently over the course of the battle rounds and the game. And what I find is that that's really relaxing from a mental point of view. And there's a lot of other reasons for that, but just simply the nature of how the turn sequences work out, it does make it more sort of, I wouldn't call it pedestrian, but there's like a kind of methodical kind of tempo to it. And it does give you some rest time, which I think is actually really valuable. Everyone in modern wargaming, seems to be obsessed with this sort of continuous interaction all the time. Everyone has to be doing something constantly, and this interaction thing where there has to be explosive things going on at every single moment of the game. And I actually am a firm believer in downtime over the game, because one of the things that happens when you've got continuous things you have to think about all the time is that you're not actually talking to your opponent or really engaging with them. You're too busy stressed about the things you have to do, and so you actually spend a lot of the time quietly doing your thing or just talking out your turn, but not actually having real social time with your opponent. And with Fantasy, because there is that little bit of downtime in your opponent's turn or even parts of your turn, you can talk to your friend and have a bit of fun and maybe make some jokes and try to put them off their game and that sort of thing, and have a good time with it. And it's something that I found doesn't happen as much with Age of Sigmar and 40k, because you're so sort of into the game, and it can still be fun and still be really rigorous. But it's I guess what I'm saying is it's a nice change to be able to sit back and relax and just have those moments during the course of the battle where you can actually have a bit of fun with your opponent and not worry too much, because the moments when you have to really decide on what's going down is actually in your turn during the movement phase. That's the most important phase of the whole thing. And outside of that, if you've messed that up, then the rest of the turn's gonna go that way. You can't really redeem it. Maybe if you're very lucky with the dice rolls, but that's really the only part of the turn you have to be very, very careful. And then outside of that, everything is gravy. So if you've done that well enough, then you should have a decent turn, or theoretically anyway, barring sort of bad dice rolling and bad luck. But that's really where the game's at in that movement phase. So yeah, just some interesting early thoughts that I have on that. That are differences from the other games, which I'm really enjoying. So that's the first sort of, I guess, immediate, feelings from after that first game. We're having so much fun, just, talking about all sorts of things and having a lot of fun in the game, and, just really relaxing. I had no headaches at the end of it. I was very relaxed, and that's just so good. I can't even remember the last time that I had a game where I felt that relaxed at the end of it after 3 hours. I felt like I could just keep playing. As my opponent said, we could have kept playing for another 3 hours. It would have been fine. But that's definitely not the case with Age of Sigmar. As much as I enjoy the game, I'm good after that game. My energy's spent. When you do a tournament with Age of Sigmar, it's a grueling match. You really got to keep your hydration going and really get into it, because it's a long day. And I didn't feel that at all at the end of my fantasy game. Now it could be that it's because it's new. I'm sort of more I've got the rainbow glasses on, and it's all sort of fairies and unicorns. But I have played subsequent games and it's the same feeling. And I think that comes down to also game mechanics and how the game actually works. There are a lot of less dice that are being thrown, which, reduces the load there and the kind of the various stages and sort of time elements to that turn, it's less. It also means that there's more swings because of the dice, so you get more sort of elaborate things happening. Those story moments kind of tend to happen. The dragon flies in and does nothing, and the little hero does the damage on the dragon and kills it just by chance. That sort of stuff. All those sorts of little foibles of the dice that turn the game on its head tend to happen when you have less dice being rolled and less modifiers or chances to improve on those odds, and that tends to happen in fantasy a little bit. You've got a little bit less to control in that case, and that can make some fun games, and you've got to take it in your stride. I'm not certainly not saying that Old World is, as we'll get onto this in a little bit, that it's somehow an amazingly balanced game or anything like that. It's got its issues and development things that it needs to do in the future to improve on itself. And I'm sure as I play more games, I'm going to be way more lucid on those things and be able to discuss them more readily. I'm sure there's some channels out there that are already discussing those sorts of elements to the game that might be a little bit out or imbalanced. Obviously, dragons are extremely powerful in this version of the game, but we're not going to talk about those sorts of things here. But just to say that I am aware of those, and you do notice them straight away. But between me and my mates, we've been doing sort of either no dragons or sort of minimal kind of tooling up on that sort of thing, or sort of keeping things a little bit reduced to allow for some other elements of the lists to come in and keep the game a little bit less, I guess, lethal from that sort of point of view, and that makes it really interesting. So for instance, in my Chaos list, I have a Chaos Sorcerer Lord. Obviously, you got the level 4, but he's on a magic carpet. He's flying around, he's doing his thing, and and there's no dragon in the list. And instead of that, I've got chimeras. So I use chimeras instead, which are a little bit more manageable, but they're an amazing unit. I mean, I don't notice too many people online using them. I've seen some lists that use them, but they're amazing with that Swift Stride and everything. If you have two of them and they go in tandem, they can do some amazing work on the tabletop. The sort of the flanking maneuvers they can do and how fast they move. Really, really interesting unit for Chaos, and a real threat if you can use them right. And I'm really looking forward to playing around with them more. You will eventually see those painted on the channel. There's some conversion work on that. I'm going to do some fun stuff with those, hopefully, and also a Chaos Sorcerer Lord on a magic carpet. But we'll be looking at that later. Those videos will be coming eventually sometime in the new year. But it's been really fun just playing around with those units. Obviously, Dragon Ogres, things like that are amazing. But just sort of moderating the list a little bit to allow for some other things so that you can sort of play around a little more. And that's been really fun. I've been playing a lot of orcs, so fanatics are a huge problem. But hey, that's that. They've always been like that, so it's fine. And you learn to deal with those things. But overall, the games have just been really great. Now, I will say, currently, I'm not planning to play this competitively right now. So I guess that is also, coloring my experience, because I'm not so worried about, overly effective lists or that sort of thing. I'm trying to play tactically and me and the guys that I play with, we'll try to play a really tough game. But there isn't that intention to move on into the competitive scene. So at least not now. So I guess that's a bit of pressure off me. So I'm not feeling so worried about the list as much. I can sort of take some off meta picks or some other things which aren't maybe as strong and be comfortable doing it. With discussions with your mate also. So that's one thing I think with Old World that isn't so much needed for other games like Age of Sigmar or 40k or other systems, is that there is a conversation that should be had if you're playing casual games with the person you're going to play with, preferably at the list writing stage, to initially say, hey, what sort of game are we playing? Now, I know that can't always be done if you don't know the person or you're just doing a pickup game at a store. But if you do know the person, having a little chat about it before you play is a great thing, because it gives those expectations about what sort of old world game you're going to be playing, and that means that you might not take certain units over others and that sort of thing. So you can kind of get to a more balanced list parity between each other, and that way you'll end up with probably a better game, because if one person thinks they're writing the most hard as nails list, and you're trying to do some fluffy bunny list, well, you know what's going to happen there. So you definitely want to have a conversation, because you can imbalance that game. Even in the early games that I've played, I can see that already, that there are definitely things like that there. But it allows for quite a lot of room, so that's really great. It allows you to play around, and I think that's one of the strengths as well of Old World, is that it is giving you a very different flavor from the list writing point of view, and those games, really different kind of vibe to the other games that are out there currently. So overall, it's been a really great experience. So I can't think of anything too negative to say about it in this early stage, apart from the things that I've already mentioned, which is some imbalances here and there. But as I said, with a discussion with your mate before you play, you can easily fix those. They're not really that big of a deal. I can't really think of any major negatives from a casual point of view. If you're just playing with your mates occasionally, there really isn't anything super negative. Unless you really are writing some very hard as nails lists, then that might be a problem. But overall, if you're just playing some fun games of Warhammer, you'll have a really good time with this game. It's an unusual game. It has all of the lists are out. You can play it anything that you want, and everything's there. You're not having to wait for years and years for your book. So it's a very interesting way they've released it, and it does give you quite a good sense of the overall game and the meta that's apparent with it. Even without even playing all of those different factions, you can kind of get a sense of it. You read through their lists, you get a sense of what the game is, because there's so much of it there for you to get into. So I think that's a really big positive. So I'm not really too negative about it, to be honest with you. I think you have to let it cook. It's a new version of a game that's been gone for a while. You got to let it get its legs under it, and I think in another year or so's time, as the game matures, they'll have enough data there to really start looking at how they might want to change it or evolve it, that sort of thing. But as an initial game and a re-entry back into the world of fantasy and that environment, that rank and flank style game, I think they've done a great job, and I am genuinely loving it. So and I hope those of you out there that are dabbling in it as well are having a good time. And if you're not, please write in the comments what you think about it. I haven't really noticed anything too negative to say about it, really. As I said, apart from those obvious things like dragons being quite strong, there isn't a lot there that I would say that's super negative or bad play experiences. There are some, I guess some issues with the formatting of the rule book and where to find rules and that sort of thing. It is a little bit, as you might say, a dog's breakfast. There's a bit of mess there that needs to be cleaned up to make things a bit clearer as to where to find certain rulings and that sort of thing. But apart from those sorts of things, I don't really know too much really that I would want to talk down on it. So for me, it's all positive so far, but I'd be curious to see if anyone else is playing it and seeing anything that they like, dislike, or whatever about it. That'd be interesting to know. And where you're playing it, if you're playing with mates or at a club or that sort of thing, or if you've been going to tournaments and how that scene is going. I'm here in Australia, so we haven't really got a huge old world scene competitively yet. There are a few tournaments happening, but it hasn't as yet really grown substantially enough yet to get regular tournaments in every state. I know that it is going on, but in slightly smaller numbers. So we'll see how it grows and continues, but I'm sure it will eventually start to reach larger numbers as people get these things painted. And that's one of the, I guess, the last thing we'll focus on is the painting meta, right? And the journey to completing an old world army or a fantasy army is, it's a big deal. It takes a long time to get that together, much longer than Age of Sigmar R or 40K. There's a lot more involved in an old world army that really does require your attention and some smart decision making on the painting side, and the modeling and converting if you're doing that as well, to try to get this done in a time frame where you're still young enough to enjoy it, right? You haven't gotten so old that you can't pick the models up. So you've got to think about those things and try to get it in an acceptable time frame. So and that's something that I'm now working through. I've established my color scheme. We're working through these nights, and trying to plan it out and take it in stages. And that's how I've been doing it. So doing a bit of modeling and then painting and then back to that and building it, and proxying stuff that you don't have or that isn't built yet, and so you get some games in as well. So you're sort of oscillating between the hobby side of it and the building and painting, and then the gaming side. So you're getting that invigoration of the social interaction and all of those sorts of really good things that come from playing the game, and then going back in with all that hype and using that energy to paint more for your army. So getting that little cycle going, I think that's really important in those early days with fantasy, to keep your interest and your motivation up. I think if you have too long of a stint away from it, it is such a daunting project that you can fall off the wagon pretty easily with something like fantasy or old world armies. So it is something to think about, and that's how I've been just using it almost like a refresher. Just I'll do another project and then I'll throw in some old world stuff and I'll work on it, whatever it might be, and then go back to something else and then bring it back in. So every few months I'm re-adding that back into the workflow, and trying to play a game, paint some models, etc. So I think that's a really great way to do it in the early days and to build up your energy levels for it, and that should eventually steamroll into full-blown constant painting and playing and all those sorts of things. Obviously real life comes first, that sort of thing, well, outside of our little hobby bubble life, we'll call it, but outside of that, back in the bubble again, hopefully fantasy then builds up a bit more pace and you start playing it more, and I think you'll find that it is really enjoyable and quite a nice refreshing change from what's out there currently. It's definitely cool. So I think that's enough waffling on this little topic. I think I've said my piece, and I'd be really interested to see what other people think about it and their experiences with it in these early days, and how they've been going with the painting as well, not just the gaming but the painting side of it. Are they succeeding? Are they getting them done? Are they finding it hard? I'll be doing more old world painting tutorials, into the future. So if there's anything that people want to see or want me to paint, we can always look at those. People have been making suggestions on AOS models and so on, and I have done a few of those tutorials, the Skaven ones, etc. So if you do have anything you're really interested for me to paint or you'd like to see me do, don't be shy about saying it. I do read all the comments and take it all on board. I can't guarantee I'll do it, but I do try my best to fit those things in. So I try to incorporate what you guys want and so on into the regime. So if I can get it done, I will. So yeah, anyway, just something to think about. So yeah, we'll be doing more of these old world videos anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this. So we're going to see how I've gone with these nights. It is a big group. It's 8 models, and batch painting for me isn't my favorite one to do. I like doing singular or 2 or 3 models at a time. Doing 8 at a time is a lot, especially if they're nights. But hopefully I've gotten through it. My ballpark time on this was hopefully 2 weeks, but maybe 3. But we'll see how I've gone, and I'll give you my closing thoughts. Okay, wow, what a journey. That was a solid 3 weeks worth of work, I can tell you that. As many know that have been listening to me for a while, I'm not the biggest fan of doing these big sort of bulk painting sessions, but it is really satisfying to finish it at the end. But it runs that danger of becoming, feeling like work, and I don't like to do that with my hobby. I enjoy to, make it more pleasurable for myself. So but it is cool to get it done, and this was pretty satisfying to finish, the first big, I guess, group of Chaos Warriors done for my old world army. That's really cool. The Warriors of Hashut. It's a pretty cool thing to see it all coming together, and you start to get a sense of the colors and the scheme as it starts to look on a bigger, on a broader set of models. So that's really cool. I'm really happy with it. They're coming up cool. They're looking good. And I'm looking forward to adding more additions to this and adding some more of the Hashut sort of conversions into more of the models. So so we start to get that look of the bulls motif and so on. I think that's really cool. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed some of these thoughts that I've got on Old World, and I'm enjoying getting into this, and it's going to be a fun year coming into the next year to see how the game evolves, and what I can add to this army and others if I go into other armies as well. So that'll be really fun. I'm definitely looking forward to playing more games and all of that. So yeah, pretty cool all around. I'm very happy, and I do have some really fun little videos eventually coming out for this army in particular, which I think will be really cool. Some nice conversions, but they're taking a bit of time to complete, so it won't be quite yet, but in the future. Yeah, but I hope you've enjoyed the whole thing and my journey with this, and I hope it's giving you some inspiration and all of that sort of thing. But I'll leave you with a nice image of these all ranked up and everything, so you can see how it looks and the paint list as I normally do. But I hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit that like button, subscribe button, it really helps me out, and I guess I'll catch you on the next one.